Good afternoon, everybody. We still have a lot of people left to come in, but it's 1:02. And in fairness to all you folks that are here on time, we'll get this thing started. We'll start with some pleasantries while folks catch up. So, good afternoon, everybody. I'm John Breault, Vice President of MLS and Member Services for Statewide MLS and Rhode Island Association of Realtors, joined, as always, by my partner in crime, Monica Staaf, General Counsel. Good afternoon, Monica.
Good afternoon, John, and good afternoon to all of you who are joining us.
It's good to
I
see
guess
you.
This is a popular topic, huh?
Yeah, this is a good one. Well, we like to have big changes in the industry to drive up attendance for our webinars. It makes Monica and myself feel important. So we know that's what you're here to see, is us, and not the topic. But
And John, we also like to drive all of our members and participants crazy too by coming up with it, by sharing this new information. So
yeah, well, listen, don't shoot the messenger, right? So one thing to note, actually, so we have a hand raised. So let's do a little housekeeping first. Uh, all the questions drop in the Q&A box in the bottom, please. We will not be unmuting anybody. We have over, like I said, 400 attendees. So if you have a question, drop it in the Q&A and we will handle questions that way. That would be great. So let's see. What I miss anything? No, I think that's it, right?
a lot.
Go
Well,
ahead.
the program is running from 1 to 2:30. We want to try and save a lot of time for your questions. So that's why if you follow
Right.
John's advice to use the Q&A, that'd be
Yep.
great. And then
And it is being recorded. You heard that. So we will make
yes.
this available so that you can rewatch and relive the excitement and share it with folks in your offices, etc. So
And John, we have the all-important antitrust disclaimer.
you do that. You're the lawyer. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. I get to be the buzzkill. Yeah. So today, if when you're putting questions in the Q&A, please do not name specific brokerages. Please do not get involved in exact amounts of compensation, because if you want us to answer your question, we're not going to be able to do it if those two things occur, or either of those two things. So
yeah, correct. And, we'll try to dance around. If there's a way we can take your antitrust laden question and extract what we can to sort of try to answer the question without naming names or commissions, etc., we'll do our best, but no guarantees. So with that, I am going to share my screen again and we will dig in. So, this industry is anything but boring. So, when we last did these drop-ins, we had a lot to talk about with the settlement. We're happy to take questions related to that at the end if there's time. If there's anything sort of you want to comment on, that's not the purpose for today. We want to really talk about some changes, some that we've announced. Well, we've announced all of these, but local changes and changes that have come through by way of NAR, the National Association, and answer as many questions as possible. And so with that, let's dig right in, shall we? So the first thing is Statewide MLS announced a couple of changes that are taking effect May 1st. And so we're going to talk about these. These were announced, I think, a few months ago. We've had a lot of questions. We sent along FAQs with these changes, but it's a great opportunity just to sort of do a reminder on these and answer any questions and maybe clarify the announcement based on some feedback that we've received. And so the first is related to non-realtor participation. Effective May 1st, the requirement to be a realtor to participate in the MLS will no longer exist. It will be optional. Statewide MLS is owned by the Rhode Island Association of Realtors. So we are a realtor-owned MLS, and we follow NAR's rules and regulations, etc., as a realtor-owned MLS. But realtor MLSs across the country have the option to open up MLS access to non-realtors. And there has been a bit of a trend in this area, some movement across the country with MLSs making that option available. And so what that means is that licensed brokers or appraisers no longer have to be realtors to participate in the MLS. But that MLS access is obtained at the participant brokerage level. So a decision for realtor participation starts and ends there. The broker controls essentially whether you're a realtor shop or a non-realtor shop. And that's really because the association's dues formula is applied at the brokerage level. So if a broker is a realtor, they have an obligation under the association's bylaws to report and pay fair share dues for all licensees affiliated with that realtor office. Individual licensees, individual subscribers cannot choose non-realtor or realtor access. So again, if you're a licensee and you are affiliated with a broker who is a realtor, thus under the association umbrella considered a designated realtor, as a licensee, you can't say, well, I'm not going to be a realtor. I'm going to go the non-realtor route, because that broker would still be obligated under the fair share dues formula for the association to report you in their dues compilation as a realtor. So it really is at the office level. Likewise, if your office, let's say the broker decides that they will be a non-realtor shop and they disaffiliate with the association, an individual licensee in that office could not obtain realtor membership because their broker is not a designated realtor. Is that fair? Did I cover that okay, Monica?
So far, so good. You're already getting questions rolling in, and you've only been talking for 2 minutes.
Yeah, so we'll get to those in a second.
Yes.
So some confusion, members of the public can't participate in the MLS. Because we're allowing non-realtors doesn't mean that anybody can participate in the service. All the other conditions of participation apply. You have to be licensed. So again, you have to be a licensed broker or a licensed appraiser engaged in the real estate profession in order to subscribe to the MLS. So there's no, one of the things that, does this mean homeowners can just, subscribe and list their own homes? No, that is not the case. This is limited to licensees. I feel like there's an important point that I wanted to make here and I'm forgetting it. So Monica, anything you want to add? Let me look at the questions really quick. I want to sort of take questions as we go along.
Yeah, I think so. One of the FAQs, I was just trying to find those on the website, but do you have those?
Yeah. So if they're on RI Realtor, if you go to on the top, there's an MLS link at the top, I think, MLS changes. If you click there, you'll find them. In fact, you could probably copy and paste them in the chat. You want me to do that?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Oh, you're gonna make me multitask.
Yeah, I can tackle one of the. So, all right. So John is going to be looking for a link to the FAQs about what he was just talking about. And then we did have a question. So he's taking care of that. We did have a question about when will the realtors remove the need for one and all to be a member? So
Okay.
I would take that to mean when will the National Association of Realtors eliminate the requirement that either everyone in the office is a member or nobody's a member?
Did that go in the chat? Did you see me drop that in the chat? Yep, there it is. Good.
Yes.
Well, okay. So that actually reminds me. Shoot, I just forgot. What that question was. Oh yeah. First of all, I'll answer that in a second, right? But let's back up because again, these changes are effective May 1st, right? So
the dues.
The non-realtor access. Hold on. No, we're talking about non-realtor access, right? So but you've paid your dues through the year, right? So and there's no reimbursement for those. So effective May 1st, you don't have to change anything. There's no reason to drop your association affiliation May 1st. You've paid through the year. You're not going to get that money back. So nothing needs to change. As a broker, there's no decision you need to make just yet. Some of your licensees may be asking, hey, what are we going to do here? Really, no decision needs to be made until the billing near the end of the year, September, whenever the billing goes out. And, is when you'll really evaluate this. Of course, obviously, as a RIAR employee, we encourage you to stay with the association. The association offers many benefits, forms, access to Monica and the legal hotline, advocacy, etc. So there's a lot of value in that Realtor membership, and we'll be promoting that more and really doing a good job of sort of delineating the benefits that you get from MLS and from RIAR, because the line has really been blurred over the years. We have this sort of combined brand of RI Realtors, which is both MLS and the association. And so a lot of people don't know who provides what. And so we're really going to need to make that clear so that you can really make the best informed decision at the end of the year as to what direction you'll go. Now, to the point of, and we've had this question, can I sort of pick and choose? Because right now you sort of have the 3-level or tri-level or whatever the correct term is, where to be a realtor, it's local, state, and national. That hasn't changed. You can't pick and choose. You can't say, hey, I want to be a member of RIAR, but I don't want to be a member of NAR. NAR, that model still is in play. So they've not indicated any desire that I am aware of to change that. The legislative conference is coming up in a few weeks. I've not heard word that they're going to change it. They're probably won't, honestly, but who knows? I mean, we just never know what will happen. But for now, it's all for one and one for all. Yep. Anything you want to add to that, Monica? Let me open up the Q&A. It's just to see. So we did that.
I went a little later on. That's an attorney question that can grab, but no, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's some of the things, because we're affiliated with the National Association of Realtors. We're separate corporations here, both Statewide MLS and the Rhode Island Association of Realtors. But because we're using the Realtor name, we do need to comply with the National Association of Realtors rules. So they're the ones who set up what's called the dues formula that one of our attendees was asking about. So yeah, I don't see they're doing that anytime soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, wish we had a better answer for you.
I'm sorry, Monica, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was just saying I wish we had a better answer on that one, but
yeah, well, I mean, right. I mean, clearly NAR owns the Realtor brand, so they're certainly not going to cut themselves out of the picture, right? I mean, I guess they could license it without having to have a requirement to be a member, but who knows? But here's one I want to answer because I want to sort of clarify this. The question is, so being a mass-based brokerage with reciprocity in Rhode Island, this means we no longer need to be associated with a local. I won't name the local, but a local in order to maintain RI MLS access. This would be perfect, as we do not. Okay. So, I mean, there's actually never been a requirement. So the only requirement is that you have to be a realtor to access statewide MLS. So you could be a realtor in Massachusetts and never have to belong to a local in Rhode Island, nor belong to RIAR, the Rhode Island State Association. You could just subscribe to MLS. And in fact, oftentimes, that's how people from Massachusetts first come in. They subscribe just to the MLS. But what we find happens a lot is then they look at just getting secondary membership with Rhode Island, with the state association, because they want access to the forms. Or in other cases, they do want to belong to the local because the local also offers other benefits that may be of particular interest to the individual. But it's never been required for access to the MLS that you had to belong to a Rhode Island local association. All you needed to do was be a realtor. So you could be a realtor in Massachusetts and subscribe to the MLS. So I just wanted to sort of clarify that.
But then starting tomorrow.
Right. Are attorneys considered licensed? I don't think by default, right?
I'll grab that one.
Please.
Yeah. So the question, if you don't see it, is are attorneys considered licensed and have access to MLS? No, attorneys, just being a licensed attorney, all that does is that gives you a shortcut to apply for a broker's license. If I wanted to get my broker's license, which I don't, I wouldn't have to take the coursework, like pre-licensing coursework. I wouldn't have to take the exam. I could just apply as an attorney, but I still have to get the license. I can't just engage in real estate brokerage or join MLS just because I'm a lawyer. You definitely have to be licensed, which is the point John was making before.
So we have a question. Can you be a realtor in another state and join as a non-realtor? I mean, again, it doesn't, I mean, it depends, I guess the question. First of all, the fee is the same. So there's no, I mean, if you're already a realtor, you can join, you can subscribe to the MLS but so there's no difference in fee between realtors and non-realtors. So I don't really know what that does for you, but, um, uh, again, it's the broker has to participate. So it's really, again, determined by the broker. So if your broker is a realtor in another state and they want to subscribe to the MLS, they can, and they would technically be considered a realtor participant because they're a realtor, right? Um, so to answer this question, yes, correct. No access to, well, so forms. So the question is, do you no access to forms if you're not a RIAR member? Yes and no. We have
Yep.
we have two forms libraries. So when you go into Transaction Desk or Loop or other products, we make our forms available to several products. There are two libraries. So let's use Transaction Desk. You have RIAR forms and you have MLS forms. The bulk of the forms are RIAR, right? Your PNS, all sorts of stuff. Monica, you can speak
Yep,
to that better than
leases.
I can.
Yeah.
MLS is basically, mostly data forms, like the input forms, the exclusive listing agreements, and things like non-MLS forms and coming soon, et cetera. So if you don't belong to RIAR, you can't get those forms. Monica, do you want to elaborate on those forms?
I do. In fact, we actually have a whole list of how many forms are Rhode Island Association of Realtors forms, but anything like mandatory disclosures, sales disclosures, lead disclosure, mandatory real estate relationship disclosure, letter of intent, purchase, all the purchase and sales agreements, addenda to the purchase and sales agreements, leases, any kind of rental forms, except for the rental listing agreement. All of those are Rhode Island Association of Realtors. And these are ones, I think what John was saying before, like things, the lines got a little blurred. Those have always been watermarked as Rhode Island Association of Realtors forms. So it's not something new that we're doing. It's the difference is just because eliminating the realtor requirement. And then John, one thing I realized that you might want to mention quickly is, why do we do this? Why do we eliminate the requirement for
Well, so it's sort of twofold, right? Part of it is risk reduction, right? The Department of Justice is looking heavily into the industry, and so a concern, and again, I'll mainly lean on you being the lawyer, is from, I guess, an antitrust or I don't know if antitrust is the right word for this particular thing, where there's a requirement in order to use one service, there's a requirement that you have to belong to this other thing, right? So they're independent entities, and so when you set a requirement that somebody has to be this in order then to hop over here and use this thing, you sort of have to be able to defend that, and there's it hasn't been challenged in this state. It has been challenged in other states, and it's been found that they've had to open up California, I think Florida, maybe Georgia, Colorado, I think a few other states where what's the word? It's not what is the Monica? Come on, help me with you're the lawyer.
tying.
Tying, yes, an illegal tying relationship. So we've not been accused of that, but again, the Department of Justice is looking at this industry. That is one of the things they're looking at. So you sort of have this risk tolerance, as a business. Do we want to continue to restrict? But then there's also the growth opportunity. It's also, as an MLS, an opportunity to grow the number of subscribers by being able to reach out across to non-realtors who are licensed, by the state and are in all other ways legally able to engage in the real estate practice. And it's an opportunity to grow our customer base, enhance the amount of listings and participation and access for you of your listings to other folks. And so it's sort of twofold: risk and growth. And so both the MLS and then also RIAR as the owner saw the value in those two things.
And I think like the strategy that we've taken as a whole in Rhode Island has been to try and stay ahead of this antitrust curve. And we saw that with the settlement agreement where we kind of took some extra steps just because no one needs to get sued in Rhode Island if we can at all help it. So
I asked you a question about Zip Logics. I don't know that we license to Zip Logics.
yeah, we do. Yes, we do.
Do we? Oh, there you go. I
Yes.
should know this. I think aren't they owned by Lone Wolf too? So we do Lone Wolf, who owns Transaction Desk, and I think they own Zip Logics now, don't they? Or am I mixed
Anyway,
up?
why don't we read the question in case everybody's not.
Oh, there you go.
Can non-realtors get the RIAR forms through Zip Logics?
Well, the answer is no. I'm Susan. Can non-RIAR realtors get the RIAR forms? No, non-RIAR. I mean, you have to be RIAR to get the RIAR form. So yeah, I got so hung up on Zip Logics, I missed the first part of that, which is if you're not a member of RIAR, you don't get the RIAR forms, right? It's as simple as that. So that's that. Thanks, Julie. Yeah, you helped. It's called a tie-in agreement. Thank you. Sorry, I'm up here floundering.
No,
The forms are there is a copyright on the forms. So again, on the RIAR forms, RIAR has a copyright on the MLS forms. The MLS has a copyright. So, and one of the things with this is we will need to make sure we fiercely enforce that copyright so that if folks who are not RIAR members are using RIAR forms, we will have a mechanism to address that.
And here's the other thing, John, just about the copyright part of it. I agree with everything that you've said. Sometimes I'll get calls, maybe someone gets a hold of a form and then they're no longer a member and they're using it. Well, here's the thing, laws change in Rhode Island and in other states. So I just was actually got a call from someone the other day who was using a purchase and sales agreement that was 8 years old. So, I mean, I could list all the laws that have changed in the past 8 years. And it also, the purchase and sales agreement, none of it complied with the Senate settlement agreement. You know what I mean? So there are a whole lot of issues that even if someone gets a hold of a stray form, maybe they don't care, but it can make a difference to their transaction or liability afterwards. So.
And I've seen a couple of questions about, some associations, will we sell forms to non-members, right? Some sort of do that, right? They have like a non-member rate. So RIAR members pay X and non-members. I don't know that. I don't think there were plans to do that at this point, Monica, right?
No, that was something actually we asked our leadership about to see what they thought. Because I knew we'd be getting some questions like that from people thinking, can we just get a forms package? And so their answer was no. So there's one question that related to forms that says, the non-realtor who accesses MLS, can they use the document forms? So all right, so the example the person gives is a non-realtor sees a listing that is not on a commercial site like LoopNet. Will the mandatory real estate relationship disclosure and exclusive buyer docs be required? So if it were a commercial listing, then neither of those forms would be required. The mandatory real estate relationship disclosure only applies to vacant land or land with 1 to 4 dwelling units. So if it were purely commercial, they wouldn't have to use it anyway. The exclusive buyer representation agreement for commercial property, that wasn't covered by the settlement. So, right. I mean,
that's not required.
It's a good idea to use a buyer representation agreement, but you wouldn't have to if it were commercial.
Yeah, the buyer agreement is strictly for residential, right? 1 to 4 families, and that's it. So, yeah, so that's not a requirement.
And someone did type. I sent a private follow-up, but someone did type false to something that
I saw that. I wasn't sure. I'm like, what did I say wrong now?
So I wasn't sure what. Anyway, if you're the person who typed false and want to do a follow-up or something, we weren't sure which one of us you thought might be saying something that was false. So
I don't know.
Okay.
All right. So I think we could probably move ahead for now. We will always circle back, and again, as Monica said, we've left plenty of time for questions. So let's go back to the next. So the other change related to May 1st is just the fee changes. The office fee is now $50. It went up. It does now also though include one admin access code, where previously if you wanted an admin code, you had to pay separately. So we've rolled that into you know, it includes one free access code there. And you can always purchase additional admin codes if you need them. And the licensee fee went up $5, the individual licensee fee. We haven't had a fee increase in, I guess, close to 20 years, you know, and costs keep going up, and we've done our best to try to, you know, keep going without increasing the fees. It's never a good time to increase fees, but, you know, as a business, at some point, you know, we need to make the decision so that we can continue to stay viable, a viable entity. So we haven't really received much on that in terms of, you know, pushback. So and really not much questions. I mean, I guess it's not entirely unexpected in the world that, you know, you're always getting things that, you know, your fees are going up for this or that, right? So let's talk next about sort of the next thing, the big.
Like, John, I'm going to interrupt you for one quick second.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to get this one. So that here was the confusion. I think before, when you were talking about the Realtor Association and MLS, like who required people to become realtors, I think there might have been a little confusion about what someone had said. The Realtor Association required us also to be a member in Rhode Island to become MLS members.
Yeah,
so
I don't.
That was what was confusion.
Okay.
So I think there might have been a disconnect between what you're saying about Massachusetts. Like before, when someone, well, until tomorrow, someone who was a member of the Realtor Association through Massachusetts or Connecticut or a different state,
Mm-hmm.
then they could join our multiple listing service without joining another Realtor Association.
Correct.
But if you're in Rhode Island already and weren't coming through a different state, yes, you would have
Correct.
had to have been.
Yeah, right. Well, in order to be if you're a real, that sort of goes to the, like, can I just belong to RIAR and NAR? Well, no, you have to belong. It's the three way. You have to have a local. You know, it doesn't have to be a local in Rhode Island, but you have to have a local. And by virtue of that, when you join a local, you've joined the state and then NAR through that local. I mean, they're the point of contact. You're not reaching out independently to all three. You join through the local, but so you have to belong to a local someplace, right? And then it all flows from there. And so that's a question I just see here. Do we still have to be a member of a local? And the answer is yes. Yeah, new fees effective tomorrow. Correct. And so the bills I think already went out for that. So that's
if someone's on auto debit, do they have to do anything?
no, they don't need to do anything. It's all set.
Okay.
So you're good.
Please continue. We know there's some unanswered questions here, but we'll go back to those.
Yeah. So all right. So let's talk about the change to the clear cooperation policy that NAR announced while I was on vacation in Florida. They dropped this bomb, and we found out the same time you folks did, so we were a little taken aback that we didn't get a little communication ahead of time so that we knew what was being announced. So we started getting questions, and we didn't really know much about it. So let's talk first about what's clear cooperation. We assume that everybody has heard of CCP but that's a wrong assumption to make. So clear cooperation, I think, was born into existence. Maybe I want to say 2020, around that time, maybe 2021. So let's go back in time. Let's hop in our time machine to prior to clear cooperation, where in Rhode Island, you take an exclusive listing and you're required to put it in MLS unless your seller says they don't want it in MLS and they sign this non-MLS form. It goes by one of three names, right? It's non-MLS, office exclusive, or exempted listings. It can be referred to by one of those three names, just to make it completely confusing. But so I think in the rules and regs, they may be referred to as exempted, but we always just say non-MLS listings, right? Or office exclusive. You see a lot in sort of the national blogs, etc. And so my seller doesn't want it in the MLS. You just sign that non-MLS form. You send the form to MLS. You have the listing. You can do whatever you want. You can market it, et cetera, do everything you need to do. It's just not in the MLS. Great. Well, I guess it was felt nationally that there was a growing number of non-MLS listings where it was felt that perhaps the brokerages were taking advantage of these situations to sort of double end deals or, create their own, list, just their own, I know they're not pocket, I guess, but, private sort of listings and not share. And so and the disconnect was that, the notion behind the non-MLS was that the seller understands the benefits of MLS, but that, the broker and the seller through discussion have determined that it is not in the seller's best interest to expose this property to all of these individuals, right? It works against their best interest. And I think that's a carve out in the code of ethics as well, right, Monica, where, you're obligated to cooperate unless it's determined that cooperation somehow is not in your client's best interest, right? So, okay. So it's not in your client's best interest to cooperate, but these non-MLS listings weren't in MLS, but they were appearing everywhere else, right? So they're being publicly marketed all over the place, but just not in MLS. So it seemed to work sort of fly in the face. Well, if it's really not in your seller's best interest, why is it being marketed everywhere and the world knows about it, just not in MLS? And the concern was, now back ahead, then we also have to remember that compensation through MLS was mandatory. And so the thought was that brokers are trying to double end the deal or whatever. I'm not taking any position on any of that. I'm just saying, so that was sort of a lot of the discussion. And so clear cooperation was born into existence that said, okay, you can continue to take non-MLS listings. But if you're determining it's not in your client's best interest to share this listing, then you are now prohibited from marketing that non-MLS. You can communicate about it internally and share it with your internal, client customer base, but you're prohibited from doing any sort of marketing, which means you can't, advertise it, can't put it on websites, you can't put a sign on the property, except there were, a list of things that were considered marketing. And if you did any one of those things, then you were mandated to get that listing into MLS within 24 hours, right? So take a non-MLS, great, you market it, you got to put it in MLS, right? That's CCP in a nutshell. We'd get questions over the years that, well, gee, I have a non-MLS listing and we're not marketing it, but I got a phone call, the neighbor next door, knows the owner of this property. They know it's for sale. They've got a broker they're working with. The broker called and wants to know if they can show it to this seller or if the seller can buyer, if the neighbor can come with the broker and look at it, or the broker's just calling to ask some questions about it. And technically, under CCP, you were prohibited from answering those questions. Just say, listen, it's a non-MLS listing and I'm not able to, under CCP, able to share information with you. Now, what happens out there in practice in the real world, I don't know, but I'm just telling you what the requirements of CCP are. And so it created a bit of I think, an issue. And so all of this sort of history and background is to, I guess, set the stage as to, well, why then this change? Oh, and let me address this bullet on the stage, by the way. In the announcement, it was, I think, March 25th or something, NAR announces this and says this policy is in effect as of today, yeah. But MLSs have up until September 30th to adopt the change. So it sort of created confusion. It's like, oh, you mean we can do this now? It's like, no. Your MLS, your local MLS has to put this into play. You can't start doing this yet because we haven't made the changes to our rules and regs. We're waiting for the language from NAR to adopt this change. So, okay. So back to what I said. So the first change is this highlighted section. So this was sort of the pre-existing, language related to an off exclusive, but now they've added in this highlighted thing that that one-to-one broker-to-broker communication is now permissible, and it's not considered public marketing, and it doesn't trigger the CCP listing submission requirement. Okay, so we don't know anything more about what one-to-one broker-to-broker communications really means or what that looks like. All we know is that that's sort of permissible. Again, we're waiting to see what the model language looks like, and hopefully we'll have some more clarification as to, well, what is that, is if I do A, is that okay, but B is not okay? We're not exactly sure. All we really know is exactly what you see in front of us, that this one-to-one broker-to-broker communication is permissible. Anything you want to add to that, Monica, while I take a drink of water?
I think you are doing well. We did have a question about sort of the precise amount of the fees. So I'm going to drop a couple of things in the chat. And then, John, did you mention before how long it's been since there has been a fee increase?
I said close to 20 years. Yeah.
Oh, so, yeah, you did. Okay, I was multitasking. Missed
it. I see a question about the delayed feature, so we'll get to that. That's next. There were two changes, so I wanted to get this one out of the way first. And I don't think I see any questions related. I mean, this one's pretty cut and dry. Again, minus what one-to-one broker. I mean, I think that's pretty clear, right? I mean, one-to-one broker, but you never know. So, I mean, because does that mean by phone, by email, by text, whatever? I mean, I think it's any of the above. But
I think you've stunned the group into silence, John.
I think I've bored them to sleep, is what you're saying.
Or you did an excellent job explaining it. No one has.
I like your spin on that. I'm going to go with that. Thank you. Okay, so to the other big change and to the comment that was dropped in QA, we have this delayed marketing exempt listings thing. I guess I'm gonna call it a status for now, and you'll see later on, was it really a status or not as we discuss it in some more detail. But for now, I'm just gonna call it a status. So what does this mean? A consumer will have the option to market their home as a delayed. Which I laugh every time I read that, because you can market your home as a delayed marketing. It seems like, well, it's not delayed marketing, and if you're marketing it as delayed marketing, right? But okay. A consumer will have the option to market their home as a delayed marketing exempt listing. This means a seller can instruct their listing agent to, and I underline this significant part, delay the marketing of their listing by other agents outside of the listing firm through IDX or syndication for a period of time. So that's the only restriction. And again, we'll talk about it in more detail as we move forward. But what's being delayed? I mean, the listing office can market it. There's all sorts of marketing going on, but what's not allowed is, now normally when you submit a listing to MLS, it can go out to syndication and it goes out to IDX websites. So other brokers can have it on their IDX websites. This delays just that portion. The listing still goes into MLS, but it's not made available for syndication out to portals, and it's not made available for IDX website distribution. During that marketing period, so again, this is for a period of time. At the end of that first bullet, there's some caveat that there's a time frame for this, right? And that's up to local MLS discretion. So we have to come up. So we have a time frame for coming soon where it can't be any more than 30 days. This thing is going to have some sort of time period. During that time period, the home seller and the listing agent can market the listing in a manner consistent with the seller's needs and interests. At the same time, the delayed marketing exempt listing will still be available to other MLS participants through the MLS platform, so they can inform their consumers about the property. So two sort of key things there that I've underlined. The first part, can market the listing in a manner consistent with the seller's needs. So in the first bullet, we've said that the MLS will not be making it available for syndication and IDX. However, in the second bullet, if the seller decides they still want the listing broker to share it out with certain portals or even certain brokerage websites, et cetera, they could still do that. It's just not facilitated through the MLS. So there's no, restriction on the marketing that the broker can do for this on behalf of the seller with the seller's obvious written instructions. So that's one key. The second key, so the listing is in MLS and it is made available. So it's made available to you as subscribers in the MLS, and it's going to be made available by way of One Home. So if you have contacts set up in One Home and you have them set up for a feed, they will get these listings. So they're being fed out through One Home. So as a cooperating broker, like, what does this mean to me if it's not my listing? You're still able to share it with your customers. The only thing you can't do is put it on your IDX website. So, okay, you can show it, everything, call up on it. They're going to let you show it, all of those things. So for all intents and purposes, it's basically an active listing, right? It's just not going to IDX or syndication. And as I mentioned, so each MLS will have the discretion to determine a delayed marketing period that's most suitable for our local marketplace. And honestly, I think, aside from the confusion of what this thing is and how am I going to explain it to the consumer and, all of that, I think that the biggest sort of item for debate that we need to resolve will be how long should one of these things be allowed to be in this delayed status? We had a presentation this morning where somebody said, 48 hours, or somebody else said like no more than 7 days. Somebody else said it should be for the life of the listing. So, others say it should be 30 days so that it's consistent with coming soon. So it's like one less thing we need to think about, right? So we sort of looked at this thing and, I'm like, well, what does this thing really look like? And so I created a grid. Oh, yeah. Although this is the other point, by the way, it requires a signed disclosure statement. So in this way, it's consistent with non-MLS and coming soon that, yay, we're going to get to come up with another form, a delayed marketing form, where if you want to do this thing, the seller needs to sign off on this thing because it's about informed consent, right? Like the seller, one of the things I think NAR is concerned about is, do the sellers really understand what they're agreeing to? So there's going to be a form for this that will explain this, and you'll be required to submit that form with the listing, much like you do with coming soon. So I don't know if I pause and just look at some questions, or I can sort of keep.
Well, John, I think there's a good question about, isn't this already in the listing agreement?
So
it's the point you made before too.
Yeah, I'm going to make so. And let me show you this because, like I said, I sort of wanted to look at like what do we have now, and where does this thing fit in? And so what you see here is a grid. The blue column is the new delayed marketing. The other columns are all the other things we have right now. And so to answer that question specifically, right now we have an internet opt-out, right? Where the seller is opting out of display on the internet, right? So you enter that listing as an active listing, and there's a yes, no, internet or allow, whatever the heck, I think it's internet, yes, no. You'd say no. And so what that does is it keeps the listing from going out to syndication. Oh, crud. I was trying to click and drag so you could see. So internet no is three things. The listing does not go out in IDX. It does not go out in a VOW, virtual office website, a feed, and it does not go out in syndication. Delayed marketing is just two of those things. No IDX, no syndication, but it's required to go out in a VOW feed. That's the big distinction because the answer is, can't they already do this, right? That's one of the big things in the industry. There's always been the ability for a seller to opt out of internet display. And, in a frank conversation about this, do you have, how many sellers are well, I'm okay, with VOW, but I'm not okay with IDX and syndication, right? It's usually, you would imagine it's going to be, I either want the listing out there on the internet or I don't. Not that I'm, comfortable with VOWs, but I'm not comfortable with IDX or syndication. It seems sort of an unusual, I don't know. You tell me if you're hearing any requests from sellers. You folks are out there doing the business. I don't know if anyone's sort of asking you that question. And I'm going to get to that point too, because we have questions about how the heck am I going to explain these things? Like now I got to tell, am I going to just present all these choices to my seller and let them pick, you know? And let me answer that now, right? So this is sort of how I think we've been looking at this thing. Again, we're not out there. We're not the practitioners, but in my mind, a seller comes to you and they want you to sell their home. And you're going to, you naturally would start off saying, look, these are all the things I'm going to do for you. I'm going to put it in the MLS and it's going to go all these places and everything else, right? And then there's the questions, I guess, is going to be with, are you comfortable with the exposure, with this exposure? And the seller is going to either say yes or say no. And if they say no, I guess then is when you sort of, well, okay, let's dig into that a little bit. What level of exposure are you comfortable? You're not going to start dropping terms like IDX and VOW or whatever, because I don't think any seller is going to have any idea what any of that means, right? So my guess is that in most cases, the seller is comfortable with you either marketing it everywhere or not. But, so you don't have to get drawn into this. Let me sort of outline. Let me just put out, this display of all these various options and let them pick, because they're not, they're just likely not going to understand the nuances anyway, right? So let me do this. I took myself off track now. Do we have any questions we want to address at this point?
Yeah, we do.
Yes. Okay.
One person liked your grid. Found that
good.
helpful. But
Thank you.
John, I think you had I've heard you give an explanation about just sort of discussing with the consumer privacy issues, public versus private.
Yeah, right. Well, I guess that's really what this comes down to, right? And that's sort of, again, you folks are out there and so when looking at this thing, let me just back up a little bit. Like I said, I wanted to understand, where does this thing sit with what we already have? Because, when I first heard about this thing, I'm like, well, it sounds a lot like our coming soon, right? Like, don't we already have this already with coming soon? It's like delayed marketing coming soon. But the difference is, you can market. Oh, I'm pointing at the screen like you can see my fingers. You can market your coming soon listing, and you can market delayed marketing, but you can't show, third from the bottom, you can't show a coming soon listing. You're not allowed to show it. You can show this new thing. You can do everything with this new thing, right? So I thought, well, is it like coming soon with showings? The only thing that makes me think of it in terms of a coming soon sort of bucket is this notion of this thing sits in this status for some period of time, and then it can no longer be in that status. So you've got coming soon that can be coming soon for 30 days, and then it's no longer coming soon. Or if we back up to our deferred showing, which is just an active listing, this is the one in the first column, there's an active listing that's in the MLS, but you're just not allowed, you're not showing it, but there's a cap of 7 days, right? So that sort of made me think, well, it sort of falls in this bucket, but in every way, this listing is an active listing. So it's really has the most in common with the last column, except so it's, but the last column with an internet opt-out, right? So the only nuance is the VOW feed. And so what's a VOW, right? Let's explain what that is a little bit, right? Virtual office website, because a lot of people don't really necessarily understand what that is. And I don't know that they're used much these days. So when the IDX policy first came out, the IDX is your real estate website where you have a public display of listings from yourself and all brokers, right? So the consumer can come to your website and they can search listings. They don't have to tell you who they are. It's a public search. They don't have to identify themselves at all. Now, when that was first made available, there were certain sort of restrictions. A lot of MLSs didn't allow you to put the address there, or it was very limited information. Well, you can only do this stuff, right? It's because it's public, it's on the internet. There were restrictions, but there were some offices that, created sort of this virtual office where they didn't have a bricks and mortar location. They were essentially a virtual office. I hate to use the name in the definition, but and so what they would do is in a bricks and mortar office in the old days, right? You would somebody would come to your office and then they identify themselves and you have some exchange of information and then all right, you sit down and you give them more information, right? And so with the vow, somebody, essentially comes to your website, they see some information, addresses were hidden, but click here and register if you want to see addresses. And when they register and identify themselves, it's, analogous, if that's the right way to say that word, to a bricks and mortar situation where now they've identified themselves. Now you're able to provide them more information by way of your vow. A lot of IDX websites have a registration. Some don't, whether they're truly vows or not. I don't know. But that's essentially the distinction. Does that mean anything to a seller who wants to, restrict where their listing is viewed? Probably not. And so I think in most cases, if you look again at the last column, if a seller tells you they're not comfortable, with this thing going out to the world, you have them sign the section that says they don't want it out on the internet. You don't need a separate disclosure form. You enter the listing as an active listing and you just say internet no, and that takes care of it. But if for some reason your seller is, wants this delayed marketing and what it does for them, then you would have to sign the separate form. And we have to determine how many days it will be allowed to be in this. The other thing we need to do is decide if this will accrue days on market. As you know, coming soon listings do not accrue days on market. It's very likely that delayed marketing will accrue days on market because, like I said, it's on the market. You're showing it. You can do all of these things. So it's an active listing and have just about every sense of the word. So it's likely they will accrue days on market. And we just need to figure out how many days. And actually, you know what I'm going to do? I forgot I did this. I'm going to trigger a poll. I created a poll because I'm curious to know launch. So you should see on your screen now. How long do you think a property should be allowed to be in the delayed marketing status? I'd love to get some feedback here.
And John, just to clarify again, you already went over this, but there was a question in the Q&A about anything that's in delayed marketing means any MLS participant or subscriber can see it and show it, right?
100%. It's in the MLS, you can see it, you can show it, and it goes out. You can share it with your clients and customers. If you have them set up in one home to get the emails, it will show up in their criteria, unless you choose to eliminate them. But I don't know why you wouldn't. I mean, like I said, it's an active listing. It's just this prohibition on IDX and syndication, which again, I don't know. I mean, listen, I'm just going to be frank. I mean, I don't know who was asking for this. I don't know that there was some overwhelming demand, but I think NAR, I mean, let's face it, there've been a lot of challenges and the DOJ looking at the industry and NAR particularly and lawsuits. And so I think under this notion of, listen, we're just trying to give consumer choice, right? We're not saying that there's a big demand or we're not encouraging people to use it or any of that. We're just creating just one more option to show, I guess, that we're consumer friendly and the consumers have choice. So this is just another choice. So if for some reason you have a seller that the internet opt-out didn't work for them because they were insistent that their listing needed to be on vow, well, now they have that choice, right?
And while people are still doing the poll, we have a couple of comments posted in chat or in the Q&A that I think you and I'd be nodding our head to, which is, this is really confusing, isn't it?
Yes.
Not your presentation, the concept of all
Yeah,
this.
it is. And I'm trying to do it. I mean, I hope this grid helps because I think, I mean, it is very confusing. And that's where I sort of just, again, sort of keep trying to emphasize, like, how do I explain this thing? And it's just, again, it's that conversation when you first sit down with your seller and you're like, all right, I mean, this is what we're going to do with your listing. This is your home, right? We're going to throw it out there. You want to sell it? We're going to market the hell out of it. Are you okay with that? And and then you sort of figure out what they're okay with and what they're not. And then you can look at this thing, because the other thing is, do you want to start marketing it today, or do you want us to market as coming soon and drive up demand or whatever you think coming soon does for you? That's another question. But it's really determining the comfort level of the seller with the exposure. I think in most cases, the seller is going to be, I mean, you folks are the professionals, you tell me, but I think most sellers are going to be like, oh, I want to sell it. Yeah, put it everywhere, right? There may be cases where, oh, I'm not comfortable with, I don't want that address out there, or, whatever, it's high profile. So I prefer you do internet. No, I'm happy with you to share it with other brokers. Or then again, there are those people that just not even comfortable with that because it's a very exclusive property or whatever it is. And then they want just the non-MLS so that it's just within your office and they're really not comfortable with it being exposed to the world. So it looks like the poll has pretty much, 100% answered. Oh, no, a half people answered, but I think it's good.
Answered.
So I'm going to share the results right now so you can see. It's a pretty even, I mean, 7 days wins, but, nothing is really running away with it. The other ones are pretty evenly split, right? So you can see what this is going to be my challenge. And, our challenge is the MLS when we try to figure out how many days to allow this thing, right? So I don't know. I mean, thankfully, again, this doesn't happen today. This doesn't happen May 1st. We have until September 30th to do this. We're sort of dragging our feet a little bit. We want to see how this develops. Again, the NAR mid-year conference is coming up in a few weeks. There's a lot of discussion nationally about this thing. And we would because the other thing we need to figure out is how do we make this a status? So you go to enter a listing and you have, like active, incomplete, or like coming soon. Do we add one more thing there that says delayed marketing so that when you do that, it automatically takes care of the yes, no's here in this grid. So you don't have to worry about it. A lot of MLSs are choosing to go that route. Some MLSs aren't doing that. They're just an active status, and they're just doing like a yes, no checkbox. Like you have internet, yes, no, or you could have like a delayed marketing, yes, no, or whatever. And you just handle it that way. So I'm not really sure. I should have created a poll for that just to see what people like. But I mean, on one hand, another status is confusing. It's like, what do all these abbreviations mean? On the other hand, it sort of makes it easy. You just pick that thing and it checks the appropriate boxes for you, because we have a lot of yes, no boxes, and that can also be a little confusing.
But we have a lot of questions about these categories of material, but I just wanted to chime in on one just from the legal perspective. So there was a question about, what kind of liability could a broker have if they're not, or a salesperson have if they're not really explaining this to their clients. Like they have a seller sign a non-MLS listing and just here they send it to them for an electronic signature. No one's having a discussion. One thing that we just found out today, and some of you may have heard about this from other news sources, there's a national organization called ARELO, which is the American Real Estate Licensing. Oh, I'm missing one of them. Anyway, it's for people who I did this before. It's for like the Department of Business Regulation, those kind of agencies across the country. So they just recently had a conference a few days ago, and this whole issue was a topic of conversation. The idea of non-MLS listings or office exclusives, whatever you want to call them. And so what their point was, they want to make sure that consumers are making informed choices. Are they getting all the information? And yeah, we had an example. One of the people, one of our attendees today posted in the Q&A, an example of a former client who was getting divorced and really didn't want to sign the yard, wanted it to be kind of a low-key showing. Right, when there can be legitimate times for privacy and all of that, or even as a strategy. But the key is, does the consumer understand, or are you just sending something for them to initial electronically? And that's something that, and they also wanted to look at if you are doing sort of a closed market where everyone is not getting access to this, is that in your client's best interest? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but that's why it's so important that you have those discussions with the consumer before just sticking something in front of them.
So there are some questions, like somebody asked, well, does this mean these listings won't be fed to, some of the national portal sites? And the answer is correct. They are not fed to those particular sites. They can be sent individually to those sites. So again, you saw one of the bullets that said that you're allowed to market it consistent with the seller's needs, et cetera. So while MLS won't be sending them to the national sites, I think as a broker, you have the ability to go into those national sites and enter them directly. And you are able to do that. And so, and there was another question related to this, that there was an announcement that some of these national sites were not going to be taking particular listings. There was a ban on particular listings. What those sites are saying is that as long as the listing is in MLS, they will continue to publish listings. So they will continue to publish coming soon listings. They will publish these delayed marketing listings. It's just that you have to send them to them directly because they're not fed through the MLS. What they are not going to display, I guess the change is that if the listing isn't in MLS at all in any capacity, then, and if you try to contact them directly to have them publish a listing, they won't do that. They want the listings in MLS. They want MLS, they see the value in the MLS and they want them to be the, sort of database of record. Do we have an example to share on filling out the MLS data sheet versus entering it as it should have? I don't have an example of that at this
I think
point.
part of it, we're still kind of working through these issues
Right.
with the leadership of MLS is trying to sort out what makes sense. And as John said, they're kind of waiting. We haven't even received the rules from the National Association of Realtors yet, because they come up with mandatory rules. So they've told us that these things are policies and will be required before September 30th. But we haven't even seen like what the rule itself will look like. And that probably won't happen until after the meetings at the end of May, early June in Washington, D.C. that are coming up.
Yeah. I saw one question or comment. It seems like the status does not benefit the seller getting the most eyes on the property. We had that comment this morning at our, obviously being the MLS, we agree that we feel that the value is that, and there have been studies on this to say that, that generally listing a property in the MLS gets the seller the best price for the home, and that's the best value and the best exposure. And that's why, I keep going back sort of like for whatever motivations, and we don't want to get into particular brokerages or their practices or any of that as to why they would want to do this sort of thing. I mean, the bottom line is it comes down, so again, this thing is sort of like about seller's choice, but that conversation with your seller, we're going to list your home. I want, I advocate to get as much exposure for you as possible. And so I want to put the listing in MLS and have it go to appear on all these websites. Are you okay with that? Yes or no? And then, go from there. If for some reason they're not, then you drill down as to, well, why not? And what sort of things are you comfortable with, so that the seller is driving that decision and you're not being sort of coerced by the broker for some other particular reason. As long as you're really advocating for the seller's best interest. Again, I'm a lawyer, no guarantees, but it's hard to argue you're going to go wrong if you're doing what's best for the seller. So,
so there's some questions about, I did see a couple of questions about kind of lawsuits. And so I think I can kind of tackle that generally and then have you chime in if you like. Have there been there's some lawsuits going on about, and just people disagreeing too about how non-MLS listings will be treated, and also how delayed marketing listings will be treated in different parts of the country. Haven't seen that coming here yet. Some of those lawsuits, we got to wait for things to play themselves out in court. A lot of it's ultimately about control. Who wants to have the most eyeballs on their websites. I think someone made a comment like that in the Q&A. But yeah, this is a time of litigation, but no matter what, I think, and especially with this delayed marketing and the changes to non-MLS, no matter what changes NAR requires us to make, some people will be happy, some people won't be happy, and probably a lot of us are just kind of confused. So we're sharing your confusion at least on some of these issues and how they're playing out. So we're trying to help you as much as we can.
All right. So here's a question. This is actually related to the buyer. So the sort of a settlement related question, because the mandatory buyer agreement document. How do we handle it as a listing agent? you got a call based on the yard sign, but the caller does not want to provide their information. Are we unable to answer their questions until they sign a disclosure? No, you can answer their questions. So this is sort of related to the settlement about the mandatory buyer agreement. And you did, where you referenced that, Monica, earlier. But the requirement is that they have to sign the document prior to touring a home. So once that's the trigger, right? So anytime before that, you can give them as much information. You don't have to have them sign anything. I mean, you can choose to have them sign things if that's the way you want to do business. But once you go to tour the home, you have to have that agreement signed. So so you're okay to answer questions on the phone
And
from
John, I
somebody.
think they're also asking about the mandatory real estate relationship disclosure. So the contract that you
Okay.
just covered, and then with the mandatory real estate relationship disclosure, often it is signed at first meeting. It has to be signed before someone shares confidential information. So yeah, so if someone just calls you up and says, or pops into an office or talks to you at an open house and says, hey, how many bedrooms does this have? Or like, is this coming, would the seller include whatever with the property? Yeah, I mean, you can answer a question like that without having someone sign a mandatory real estate relationship disclosure. But when someone wants to start telling you about their finances or why they're buying or anything that would potentially be that they wouldn't want other people to know, then that's when you would need to have the disclosure signed.
Yeah, so I see two here that I want to address. The first one actually came up this morning, and it's a good point. If it's the intent is to give the seller the option, like, this delayed marketing is about giving sellers the option. Why would you limit the days for that option? It should be for the life of the listing. So we've heard that for the people that sort of advocate for the life of the listing, why would there be a delay, a time, limit on this thing? And the real answer, I mean, I guess so, because when you think of it, and so my answer to that really is, I agree, and it becomes big. I mean, if it's for the life of the listing, it's really an active listing with internet no, right? I mean, again, I guess it comes down to, again, where for the whole life of the listing, they don't want this thing out there. Is it really an internet no, or is it really that the seller, no, I want it for the life of the listing, but I do want it to go out to vows? Because the reality is, who even has a vow? Like, what exposure are they getting on a vow like that? Like, the vow isn't going to really drive any traffic to the listing, right? I mean, that's the least of the three options. So, like, it doesn't really seem practical that a seller is going to insist that it be available in a vow, but not on a portal or IDX where they're going to get the most traffic. So it's sort of bizarre to me. And so if it's the life of the listing, it really is like, well, just make it an active listing with internet. No, I think. The other one, with delayed listings, I understand that some companies won't allow these properties to ever appear on their websites. Is that the same? Is the same true for coming soon listings, or are they treated differently? They're actually treated the same that way because we don't feed coming soon or delayed marketing listings. So neither one is available for other brokers' websites. That being said, if I'm the listing broker, I can market my delayed marketing or my coming soon on my own website. There's no prohibition for you on your own website. If it's your listing, you can market either one of those on your site. So they're really handled the same way that way. So I hope that answers that question.
And let me just do, someone took exception to my comment about the mandatory real estate relationship disclosure. So
Okay.
I'd just like to
I'm
clear that
glad
up
somebody's
quickly.
taking exception with you. Good.
Yeah, they don't just disagree with you.
Yeah, perfect.
So I'll read this comment. That's dangerous. You cannot counsel, advise, recommend, or advocate without a mandatory real estate relationship disclosure. Well, I always try and draw a distinction between what the law says and what I might think is a good idea or a good business practice. And so, yeah, if I were a broker, I'd be telling people in my office, get that signed right away. The law itself only requires but the exchange of confidential information. So yeah, I think in a legal world, I think that that's the best approach is having consumers sign it as early as possible, but it's not actually what the law itself says. And then John, I just want to make one quick, take a quick commercial break, not a real break, but I just want to mention something before our communications department and professional development department get mad at me. So in case you haven't seen this, and if, because we have about, just a little bit over 15 minutes left in this session today, but realize some of you might need to take off. Just wanted to say, if you haven't seen this already, next Thursday, May 8th, there is an unconference, also called as Rebar Camp. What's an unconference? I'm sure you were dying to ask, and I'll put the link in the chat. Basically,
I shall do that for you.
okay, thank you.
You got it.
Basically,
I'm here for
if
you.
you haven't been to one of these before, it is the people who attend decide what they want to talk about. So you just go there, you stick on a Post-it note, hey, I want to talk more about these MLS changes, or I want to talk more about the lead law. I'm sure I'll get tons of takers on that one. Or if there's something you want to talk about, but you really set the agenda of what this conference is about. And so it's going to be May 8th, 4 to 8, Alpine and Country Club in Cranston. And John and I will both be there, as well as a number of realtors.
With
So
bells on.
yes, and it's
I figured
free.
I could stop sharing out the grid and so we can see each other and continue to answer questions. We're going until
Oh, John, and it's
2:30.
free. It's free, and you get appetizers.
Oh, there's food. All right.
Yes.
Free food is me food. I'll be there.
Yep. That's
Um,
it. Thank you. End of commercial break.
all
Go
right.
ahead. Well, we had a few early
Yeah,
questions. I don't know if
so
you want to go back, maybe.
I see something about
over this.
CMAs. I mean, the thing with the delayed marketing and even coming soons, I mean, they're in the MLS, so they should still be available for CMAs. If you use like RPR's CMA, I don't think they're going to go out to RPR. So, other products like that, it may be challenging. Or if you're getting a feed or integrating with some third-party product, then they wouldn't get these while they're in that status. So that would be challenging. But within the MLS, within Matrix, they should be available for your CMAs. I can look into that further. But
So, John, on a lighter note, I know I'm
good.
catching you in mid-sentence. Someone wants you to attend the conference with bells on. So I would suggest to anyone who
Oh,
attends
yeah.
the unconference to bring some jingle bells for John to wear. Okay, go ahead.
Great.
You
All
asked
right.
for it. You asked for it.
Geez.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, regarding the non-MLSs though, and that type of thing, those not being in the MLS is challenging, but we do allow listings that are sold outside of the MLS to be entered in under certain caveats for comp purposes only, because we do recognize that whatever your feelings are about listings that are off MLS, et cetera, that there's still value to you in having access to that data for the purposes of CMAs. So we like to give that opportunity for those to be entered into the MLS, ideally within 24 hours or so, or 48 hours after they sell, so that they're useful comps.
So I think there are a few questions now about, yeah, sorry. Just
What?
got some late breaking news here. All right. I think that there are some questions about just how people do their settings now, because like one of the questions I see here is, are our MLS feeds currently sent directly to all other websites?
So our
We
MLS
talked a
feed
little bit about,
directly. Yeah,
like,
I don't know.
listings. I think I would interpret that to mean that your listings now controlling the syndication.
So let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, so we have a product called List Hub that the broker can go into on the dashboard, remember Gateway, and they can choose what national websites your listing goes out to. So, there's some, I don't know, 50 sites there, and they can go and control where those are fed to. Additionally, there are a few yes, no boxes, I think, in there, like realtor.com or whatever it is. And when you enter a listing, that you can go and control where your listing goes. But under the IDX policy, when you enter a listing into MLS, it's made available under this they used to call it broker reciprocity, where your brokers are allowed to display each other's listings on their websites. But there was always that consumer opt-out, where that internet no, where the consumer could say, I don't want that on other brokers' websites. So so I hope that answers that question. This one on the bottom: if a non-franchise brokerage decides not to be a member of NAR, and another commission-related lawsuit arises in the future, what protections, if any, would the brokerage have without NAR affiliation? So that's a good question. It depends on the lawsuit, but let's just talk about the settlement agreement, right? So NAR protected realtors and also brokerages under whatever what was it, 2 million in sales or whatever that number was. They were protected under the settlement. And the requirement was that as of I'm just going to say it's not the right date,
In
but like
August.
the settlement approval date or whatever
Yes.
it was, you had to be a realtor. So, you don't have to continue to be a realtor to be protected under that settlement agreement if you were a realtor as of that date. But you have to continue to adhere to all those practice changes, right? You have to do all the things that were agreed to in the settlement. So getting the buyer representation agreement, not putting compensation in the MLS or whatever the various things were. So, but you do continue to be protected. Now, if a new lawsuit were to come out and NAR offers a protection, well, obviously as non-realtors, you wouldn't be protected under anything new. Is that correct, Monica?
Yep, I'm nodding. I'm nodding.
Good.
Oh,
You're
and I was
nodding
supposed
off
to.
or you're nodding? Yeah.
No, my eye is watering. I have allergies. It's just all of a sudden my eye, it looks like I'm crying, and it's not because of anything anyone said. So I am supposed to tell everybody that after I just mentioned that unconference, the rebar camp next week, to make sure to have everyone register and not just show up for those free appetizers. So make sure and
I
register
think.
to that link John sent. So
Oh man, well, somebody's watching and paying attention. Like, don't come and just get food. They got to stick around. Well,
well,
listen,
they
that
got to
was my
register.
strategy. That
They
was
got to
she's talking.
register.
They're talking to me. Oh, to register. I got you.
No dashing and dining. Got to show up.
That's me, usually chew and screw. So I think we pretty much got the questions. I mean, we're
I think there
here,
are a
but
couple, well, I think there are a couple in the beginning that we might want to jump back to the first part of your presentation about the membership issues that are changing or the elimination.
yeah. All right.
of
So here's one.
membership
Will a
requirements.
realtor be allowed to join an office that is not owned by a realtor broker? I mean, you can do whatever you want, right? You can join wherever you want. The question becomes, would you be considered a realtor or a non-realtor? So I think I mentioned this, but I've been going at like a breakneck pace here. So the broker controls whether you're a realtor shop or you're not a realtor shop. And so if you're a realtor with a realtor shop and there's a non-realtor brokerage, and you go over to that non-realtor brokerage, even though you've paid your dues throughout the year, you're technically no longer a realtor, right? Because you're not affiliated with a designated realtor. So right? Help correct me if I'm wrong there, Monica, but I think that's how that works. Again,
No,
for the
I
purposes of
had the easy
MLS,
part. John,
for
I
the
had the easy
purpose,
part today.
yeah, you always,
I'm your
yeah,
sidekick.
thank you.
You're in charge.
So, all right, I'll just make up my answer then. No, that's how it goes. And again, now for the
No, it's
purposes of
true.
MLS, it's not yet. Oh, Donna McGinn's here. You're nodding yes, that's correct. Oh, that's good. Thank you, Donna, for having my back. So yeah, so you would be considered a non-realtor. Now, again, from MLS perspective, your fee is the same, and what we would do is just change your sort of behind the scenes labeling from realtor to non-realtor, and so yeah, that answers that. We answered the one about attorneys. Copyright. Well, what if a buyer agent is a non-member but the seller agent is? You will end up with one party using a copyrighted form.
Yep,
Yeah.
and that's true. I mean, that's the case now. It's, if a seller, a buyer, a landlord, a tenant's part of the transaction, someone who's not licensed, someone who's, sorry, not licensed, someone who's a realtor in another state, not in Rhode Island. Yeah, that always happens. And yes, if the thought there is, well, then they have access to our forms. They do, but they're not going to have access sort of on an ongoing basis. I think the main issue is we can't stop every single person in the world from using a copyrighted form, but we do have outside counsel that has copyright and litigation staff there. And yeah, we want to try and protect that. I did want to mention, if I can, just a few other benefits we kind of didn't get to. So second commercial break, John, so you can do whatever you want to do.
I'll drink some more water.
except yawning. So, no, but one thing I did want to mention was some of the benefits. I did put a link into the chat earlier, but for RIAR benefits. But with the Rhode Island Association of Realtors, you also have access to government affairs. Some people have said, okay, well, aren't you going to be lobbying anyway? Like, even if I just don't renew my membership or my brokerage doesn't, aren't you still going to be lobbying? That is true, but the difference is you won't have access to the information on an ongoing basis about what's happening, what's potentially happening. And that's something that's huge. I mean, if you think of like people, the difference between a realtor who represents landlords or is a property manager being able to tell their landlords, hey, this lead registry is coming soon, if they having that ability last year, or there might be a rental, or there might be a specific tax happening, or this bad law might be going away. Having that advanced information and having yourself distinguished to be the expert is really priceless to be able to do that. Also with the Rhode Island Association of Realtors, you do, even though you can take education at a number of real estate schools, couple of benefits with ours, there'll continue to be a member discount. So if you continue to be a realtor, you would have a discount taking the classes. And also, look, I can't speak for other schools, but ours is any class that has sort of a legal component to it, or legislative component to it. Our classes are accurate, they're up to date because we're tracking legislation so closely. So
So
that's enough
excellent. So somebody said,
doing.
I answered yes, and I agreed. But Monica Staaf and the legal hotline is a fantastic benefit of membership. So kudos to you, Monica.
Oh, I just typed that in there anonymously. So no,
You
just
typed it
kidding.
as anonymous, so good job.
No, just kidding.
How would you know if a non-realtor is using a copyrighted form? I mean, we wouldn't unless it's reported to us,
Well,
right?
we do if someone tells us. And
Yeah.
so, and also some people have done things like try and post them on their website.
Yeah.
Like
I
a
mean, you lose the
non-realtor
integration,
posting.
obviously. So if you're relying on the products to, handle all that, the signatures and all of that stuff, you don't, obviously lose access to all that because you wouldn't be able to access that library. And so, and if you are a non-realtor, what forms do you use to input the listing into MLS? Again, if as an MLS subscriber, you have access to the forms
Yes.
that you need for that. You have the listing agreements and you have the input forms, et cetera. So though anything related to MLS specifically, you do have access to the forms. The forms that relate to the transaction itself generally all fall under RIAR, and you would not have access to as a non-realtor. And our last question here was asked a while ago, but how does this affect agencies that list in other states and yet it's marked as active under agreement or sold in the MLS? I don't. I guess it depends. I mean, we can only enforce our rules as to how the listing is in the MLS. So if a listing is one particular status in our MLS and it's advertised in another MLS as a different status, if our status is the correct one, then okay. If for some reason it's in a status in our MLS, let's just say they put it in a particular status, like I guess AU, right? Let's say it's active under agreement, but the deal is fallen. Now, technically, you're still supposed to show it. So let's say pending. Let's say the listing is pending in statewide, right? Oh, okay, it's off the market, it's pending. But that deal falls through. They leave it as pending in statewide, but in Massachusetts or wherever they have it as active and they're showing the listing. Well, that would technically be a violation of our rules because the listing is no longer pending, it's active, and it needs to be made available that way in our MLS. But each MLS is independently enforcing and establishing their own rules.
And
And so
John,
that was our last question, Monica.
sorry, I was just gonna say, John, wait, not quite yet. No, it's our last question in the Q&A. But speaking of enforcement, so before we let everybody go, so if someone thinks that there is a violation, how do they contact MLS? What will MLS do? And do they have
So
to give their name when they call?
yeah. So there's a couple of ways. If you go to rirealtors.org, I think you can report, there's a form there. You can report a violation. You can identify yourself or not. All complaints are handled anonymously. So even if you identify yourself, it's so we can follow up with you for clarification. But the snitch is never identified. That is handled anonymously. So under no circumstances would we ever reveal who has filed a complaint. There is also within Matrix There's like, I think, a little exclamation mark and like a blue triangle or something where you can go in. If there's a listing and you know there's an issue, you can click on that as well. And I think it opens that same sort of web form where you can fill out a complaint. And that way, you can call, you can email. There's any one of a number of ways you can let us know about issues. I see we have 2 more questions. See, you stalled, and now they're asking, oh my God, I have 4 questions.
They're calling people snitches.
Snitch, you mean rat. Exactly. Snitches get stitches, right? No,
No, I'm going to call them whistleblowers. That's a
Yeah.
much more.
I like to say this, the
high-minded
snitch.
term.
I always say we rely on the snitch method, but I mean, I say that with love in my heart. And thank you, Deb. Thank you for attending today. Appreciate it. I second that belonging to RIAR and the legal hotline are invaluable to brokerages, 100%. Also, they do a great job for their membership to protect their interests as well as best practices. And hey, John Breault isn't bad either. Oh, thank you for that. I added that last part.
I'll take that anonymously, John.
I'll just thank you to Monica. Like, I've been just gas bagging the whole time and getting no love. Oh, no, Monica's great. I really do appreciate it. It's really a tremendous benefit. And so, access to her and access to the forms, I think are the 2 real, I mean, there's a ton of great benefits, but those are, high up there, I think, as to what customers, members appreciate and really value. So
I feel like PBS or something like, save our jobs, we'll give you an umbrella.
That's great. So, and you still have a few minutes, so you can give us a call. And if you want to get on the monthly plan, you'll get this great DVD set of Monica's videos for the last year. So
no, seriously, it's something someone posted they love you too.
Thank you, Julie.
Did, yeah. No, I think
right back at you, Julie.
No, I think the reality is, I mean, look, every brokerage, there's not a one size fits all. You have to decide, as the broker has to decide what makes sense for you. If someone had posted earlier, like, what's the benefit of being a non-realtor? I mean, you tell us. I mean, obviously it's saving money, but you get what you pay for. So if you don't need any of the benefits and you want to save money, that's.
And again, you're not compelled to make a decision effective May 1st. Anybody new coming in, they don't have to be a realtor, but you've paid through the year. You have time to really evaluate the services. We're going to be releasing more and more information to really make clear what benefits you get so that you can make a really informed decision at the end of the year. And we feel pretty confident that you all will see the value in not only RIAR, but your local and national. And so we feel hopeful that you will continue to be realtors. Thank you all. I guess, I've gotten some kudos now, so I appreciate it. Thank you for your time. I think we're ending right on with 10 seconds left, right on the dot. So thank you once again. We may or may not be doing another one of these. We'll see how it goes.
Depends probably before September, we will be doing one of these.
Well, yeah, once we finally sort of figure out where we're going, we have time, but we really need to sort of figure out where we're going. So we will do that. So I appreciate it.
John, they will have thanks for doing the heavy lifting today. And then they'll be sent the video. And then also, can they get your slides?
Yeah, sure.
Your slides too.
Yeah,
so we'll have that sent out once the video is reviewed. We'll have that all sent out to you, and it'll also be available on realtors.org. So
excellent.
So you had some excellent questions today, and I know John's trying to shut me off so we can end exactly at 2:30. So I'm being quiet, but thank you very much. We all appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Take care.